Welcome into the Fantasy Flow podcast. We're doing another live episode. Andy and Austin.
Woo!
In person, we're hanging out, even though we live on opposite sides of the great state of Washington. I made the trip over this time for a poker game with a bunch of our buds and to record a couple episodes for fun. Yeah, this episode's going to be pretty fun. I mean, it's kind of the dead zone of fantasy football time. Some people are excited for some, rookies that are coming in. The NFL draft's around the corner. And we're going to kind of have some fun with that. To start this episode, I compiled a list of the top 10 fantasy football flameouts from roughly the last decade. Just because everyone in Dynasty Fantasy Football, they're talking about, what should I do with these draft picks? How valuable are what pick and everything like that. And, they can give you advice on how good they think certain players are going to be, what the situation's going to be like. But at the end of the day, these are, and we'll see from the results of my research and the video, but some of these guys just totally flame out despite all the talent or opportunity or whatever, right, Andy? I mean,
boo.
Yeah. The hit rates aren't as good as we think they are. So we're going to learn a lot more about that and have a lot of fun along the way. I say we just freaking jump into it.
Dive right in. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, here we go. The top 10 fantasy football flameouts of the last decade.
Oh boy.
I limited it to the last decade because I feel like anything beyond that could be dismissed as the NFL's gotten better at evaluating players and that was forever ago. So I kept it within the last 10 years. I also chopped off 2024 because that's just
too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I mean, some people could argue that 2023 or 22 is too soon too, but for the purposes of this video, we're looking at 2015, so 10 years ago, through the 2023 draft. And I went through all of the wide receivers who were drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. Mm-hmm. Same thing for quarterbacks. We're talking first-round quarterbacks. And then running backs, I included rounds 1 and 2 of the NFL draft for running backs because running backs just don't get taken in the first round that much. Yeah. It's a very small sample size if I were to limit it to that. So I think it's going to speak for itself for the most part. These guys are busts, and they were drafted highly in the NFL draft. We're talking about first-round picks. But these guys were also highly touted fantasy football studs that people were trading a lot of assets for, either for the pick to then draft these guys, or after the draft, it's like, oh man, what a young guy full of talent, So I'm excited to get into it. Number 10, we got Mitchell Trubisky.
Oh boy.
Number 2 overall pick by the Chicago Bears in 2017.
Yep.
Hilarious that the 49ers were in the number 2 spot. And then they were like, we're going to take him unless you trade up. And then the Bears gave up additional assets to move up 1 spot to take Mitch Trubisky.
That was so gross. I remember watching that. That was awful.
It's kind of crazy. And then obviously, Patrick Mahomes goes later in the first round.
Right.
As well as Deshaun Watson. I think a lot of blame... there's enough blame to go around here. I think the Bears are at fault for this as well. Mm-hmm. Mitchell Trubisky actually has a winning record in the NFL as a starter, to this day.
Wow.
He's won more than he's lost. But for fantasy football, he's a flameout.
Yes.
Because he lost his starting job. He's a backup now.
Yep.
And he was just such a golden boy out of UNC. I remember at the time it was he's just tall, handsome kid. Says all the right things. He's got a great arm. And, he just really seemed like a guy who on paper translates well. And to this day, I don't really know why. You could point to decision-making, I guess. But, I don't know. Why didn't Mitchell Trubisky work?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of pressure being the number 2 overall pick.
Sure.
This was also when UNC was, just starting to be a good football program. This was such a shocking pick because they took a quarterback from a non-football school at the time.
Basketball school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
UNC has gotten better now, but back then not so much. So this was just such a shock. Like you said, they moved up one pick just to go and get this guy. You have all this pressure. That was also must have been the GM before Ryan Poole, with the current GM of the Bears. So I forget who that was, but
No, yeah.
he obviously lost his job because of this decision.
One of the wildest picks with hindsight, and yeah, for fantasy football, quarterbacks are not safe,
Right.
Despite being highly drafted.
Right.
Like, I think that's the takeaway, and because you'll see in all these slideshows, I included other guys who are busts in the last 10 years that I could have given this spot to.
Okay.
I kind of picked Mitchell Trubisky just because it was so crazy being the number 2 pick.
Yeah.
But like Marcus Mariota was the number 2 pick, and he's kind of a good, not great. He's a backup. He's hanging around the league. But for fantasy football, he lost his job. He didn't get it done, and that's just, you lose so much value like when you invest highly in a quarterback, and then it's like they're not a starter. It's like they evaporate for fantasy football.
Dynasty and actual NFL teams. It's the same. I mean, it's almost hand in hand. You invest all this into this guy, and then in 3 to 4 years they flame out.
Yep. Yeah. If you're in like a super flex league,
Right.
a quarterback who is starting is so valuable.
Right.
Just whether they're like top tier or like not good or whatever. It's like as long as they're starting, they have a lot of value in super flex leagues, in 32 team leagues. But as soon as they lose their job, like Kenny Pickett, Marcus Mariota, Zach Wilson,
What do you do?
it's like if they're not a starter,
Do you cut
They're
them?
toast.
Do you keep them just for the chance of a rejuvenation? Like you're left in limbo.
yeah, they're absolutely toast.
Okay,
So,
who you got next?
next, I think I have another quarterback. I do. Paxton Lynch.
Oh God, what a guy!
Everyone forgets about Paxton Lynch. He was a first-round quarterback pick, number 26 overall by the Broncos in the 2016 draft. He started 4 games for them before being released.
That's terrible.
It is terrible. I included other quarterbacks who also, unlike the guys in the previous slide, these guys hardly even started. They were first-round picks in the NFL draft who hardly started.
Right.
I'm talking about Dwayne Haskins, Josh Rosen.
Oh, Josh Rosen. That guy.
These are just such busts, and it's like we didn't even see them for long enough to really fully understand what even happened.
Right.
I think that the takeaway isn't that like there's some sort of through line that I've found that you can identify future busts. I think the point is just because a quarterback is taken in the first round of the NFL draft does not mean they're going to work out. And so for fantasy football, you got to really watch out.
Right.
That's kind of my takeaway here.
This is all pre-Bo Nix, right? So this is all John Elway trying to find the next John Elway after Peyton Manning left the Broncos, and that was just such a disaster of
Tim
a road
Tebow
trip.
had a moment,
Tim
and
Tebow.
then Paxton Lynch. They were in limbo for a long time, and then Peyton Manning came and saved them.
Brock Osweiler.
Oh my gosh, yeah, he started more games than you'd think.
Teddy
Brock
Bridgewater.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, Paxton Lynch, first round NFL pick. Like, he made his money.
Yeah. You're right.
Crazy.
Started 4 games before being released. I think that's the craziest stat I've seen so far.
Yeah. Stay tuned. Okay. There's some crazy stats.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to switch positions here.
Sure.
Number 8, John Ross, local hero.
Yeah.
I don't think to this day, probably the best Washington Husky that Seattle's ever seen.
Yep. 100%.
His explosive plays, he just taking kick returns to the house, seemingly like every other game.
Right.
Just an otherworldly speed. He ended up being the number 9 overall pick by the Bengals in 2017.
Woo!
Too fast, right? Like, he set the record at the combine, and he pulled something while he was he was too fast for his body, and that should have been the first sign, right? For everyone, the Bengals, for fantasy football players,
right.
It's like this guy's body cannot keep up. I have Henry Ruggs also in here as just a total speed demon that flamed out, obviously for different reasons, right?
Sure.
But this archetype of just like a speed demon who's gonna be the next Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah.
It's like that. It does not work out as often as you'd think. Like,
Sure.
every draft, it's like, this guy could be the next Deshaun Jackson. And it's like, there are not that many Deshaun Jacksons. It is not a once-a-year thing. It's not a every other year thing. Like, it just doesn't work. Christian Watson is another player that you could throw in here as just being, like, outrageously fast. The deep ball, you know, when it works, it works. But his body can't keep up.
Sure. And
So-
and we've already seen that, right, with him, with Christian Watson. What's crazy is he's the 9th overall pick. That is absolutely bonkers to me.
Top 10.
Top 10. I would be curious to see if he was the first wide receiver drafted in this draft class. Because they probably saw that record-breaking combine number, 40-yard dash, and said, "Yeah, sign me up. You deserve to be a first round, but even more a top 10 pick."
Yeah, I want to say it was like Corey Davis or something like that.
Oh,
It was a year that was particularly bad for wide receivers.
Yeah.
Despite being a lot of highly drafted guys. Just not as safe as you'd think.
Sure.
Staying with the wide receivers, at number 7 we have Kadarius Toney.
Look
A
at
little
that.
more recent. Okay, we had a couple examples from yesteryear with Paxton Lynch and John
Sure.
Ross. These guys aren't even relevant. Kadarius Toney's much more recent. He's still in the NFL. I believe he was with the Browns last year. Number 20 overall pick by the New York Giants.
Yikes.
And again, just like a freak athlete. Looked so good in college, very dynamic, the way he moved. He just didn't move like other guys.
Sure.
It was very cool. His highlights were very exciting. And that's why I don't have any other comps for him, because I'm like, who's like Kadarius Toney?
Not many others.
And-
Xavier Worthy nowadays?
Well, yeah, but he's too good.
Yeah.
So it's like he worked out.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's really hard when I'm looking at this list of busts, because Kadarius Toney's just so talented. So I don't know if it was off the field stuff, work ethic.
Man,
We're not close enough to really like judge him for that, pick that apart. But he cannot stay on a team. Every
No.
team that has Kadarius Toney wants to trade away Kadarius Toney.
And I remember when he first came out, there was a lot of hype for him as a player, and his film was good, not only in college but in the NFL. When he played, he was great, but he just can't stay on the field. He can't, and like you, not only can he stay on the field, he can't stay on the team.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's so hard to diagnose these guys, and we've already seen, I mean, we're only up to number 7, but there's so many different reasons why someone can be a bust. You can be a starter, but just not that good, like a Mitchell Trubisky,
Right.
and you lose your starting gig, making you a bust. Or you can lose it due to injury, or you
Right.
can lose it due to just like flaming out, like
Right.
Kadarius Toney.
Right.
We're going to go to our first running back on the list.
Sure.
I got Javonte Williams on this list, number 35 overall pick by the Broncos in 2021. This is the second Denver Bronco on this list.
Right.
And you'll notice he's not a first-round pick, he's a second-round pick. But like I
Sure.
said, for running backs, we're including that second
Yeah,
round
makes
because
sense.
that represents a significant investment in the running back position. It's
Right.
just different. We
Yep.
don't got to explain that. But man, I can't remember a running back who was hyped up as much as Javonte Williams, who like wasn't a top 10. You know, like there's like the Saquons and the Zekes. You know,
Right.
but like the fantasy community specifically was just so in on Javonte Williams, and it was basically just injuries.
What was the hype around? Because he was going to be the feature back.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
the situation. Everyone was really excited for him to take over just as a 3-down workhorse.
Sure.
And it was all off season. It was like, you can't pay too much for Javonte Williams because of his youth and
Sure.
everything else. I kind of have Jonathan Brooks, who's, you know,
Oh God.
maybe a little
Don't-
too
yeah.
soon.
Don't get me started on
but
that, dude.
it's just the hype and then the injuries.
Sure.
And it's just devastating.
Sure. This is the one that I kind of have some pushback on. I think we're just a little bit too early to the table on him. He's with Dallas.
Yep.
So I don't have very much hope for Dallas, but I still do have some hope for Javonte Williams. I think he can be fantasy relevant. Now, is he going to be a top 15 running back? Probably not. But I don't think I don't know if he deserves to be on this list, is what I'll say. Just
Yeah.
for so early.
Would you put Jonathan Brooks here, or is it too
Yes.
early for him?
Yeah. But that's Andy having a strong opinion against Jonathan Brooks. Like, that was so stupid from the Panthers' perspective. So
Yeah, I totally hear you there. Javonte Williams, he hasn't flamed all the way out.
Right,
He's
right.
still in the league, and he's still going to get some carries. But for fantasy football, if you, in every dynasty league, like, someone invested heavily in
Right.
Javonte
100%.
Williams, and they're not getting their return back.
right.
We're going to go on to number 5 here, another running back, Sony Michel.
I love how you just have his jersey. You don't even give him the props of a proper picture.
Oh my god! No, he won a Super Bowl with the Patriots.
Oh.
I also got a lot of enjoyment out of that. That's what every Patriots fan will say. Oh well, he was our starting running back when
Right.
we won that Super Bowl.
Really,
Yeah,
that was James White.
pretty much, dude. If you're not good enough to hold on to your starting job, then you're worthless for fantasy. Like I'm talking about dynasty football. Like, there's producing, and then there's actually being good at your job. You need to do both.
Yes.
For dynasty fantasy football,
Right.
because, like I said, as soon as you lose your gig, it doesn't matter how many points you were putting up for fantasy. You're not going to be putting up any more points. You need to hold on to your job.
Right.
So I got CEH also in this list. I think, Sony Michel was number 31 overall.
Yeah.
CEH was 32 overall.
Right.
So just not as safe as you'd think, being a first-round pick. I think both those guys won a Super Bowl. I think they're just great comps, and now they're not starters. Other thing I'll say, Sony Michel, out of Georgia, I believe.
Him and Nick Chubb.
And Nick Chubb went just a few picks after him,
Right.
which is kind of crazy.
Right,
And
yeah.
this year we have 2 running backs from the same team at Ohio State.
Oh, of course. Yes.
So that's kind of an interesting comp. One of
That
them
is.
was
That is.
a Pro Bowler,
Right.
All Pro, and then the other one just totally flamed out.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to track.
Yeah, and there was a lot of doubt around Nick Chubb because he was, the 1B to Sony Michel at Georgia.
Yeah, I remember at the time for fantasy football, it was like, oh, well, Nick Chubb doesn't catch passes. So the guy you want is Sony Michel.
Right. Ooh, that's interesting. And then Nick Chubb is the one that can break away from literally anybody.
Yeah. He's just better at being a running back.
Sure.
And his value is just sustained so much longer than Sony Michel.
Sure.
So that was number 5, Sony
Okay.
Michel.
I agree with this one.
All right, we're going to switch positions again.
Oh, boy.
We're going to go back in time a little bit. This is going as far back as we can. Exactly
Sure.
10 years ago. Kevin White,
Number 7.
7 overall pick by the
Number
Chicago
7.
Bears.
Oh.
Second Chicago Bear on this list.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, there are some themes developing. I think you can talk about the situation. You can talk about how the teams are run. But, man, he played 14 games in his first 4 seasons with the Bears. So that's
3.5 games.
it seemed like a combination of being bad, like not getting on the field, and also just being injured. In Kevin White's, you could argue, and I think rightly argue, that he got injured and then he wasn't as good because of his injury.
Sure.
And he's just constantly battling through the injuries, and he's never the player that he was in college. I threw in N'Keal Harry as another one because he's another first-round wide receiver who's kind of that big body, like ex-alpha receiver. N'Keal Harry did not have the injuries that Kevin White did, so it's not a good one for one. But
I had to ask you about Kevin White. When I first saw this list, I said, who is that guy? Because I haven't been playing Dynasty as long as you.
Right.
But also, he flamed out so quickly that I forgot that he even existed.
Yeah,
And then the fact that he got picked in the first round, top 10 again.
Yeah,
That's absolutely bonkers.
It is bonkers. You would think, okay, well, I'm drafting a wide receiver who was a top 10 NFL pick to my team.
Right.
You would think that the floor would be higher.
Yes.
You say, okay, well, this is a safe pick, right?
Right,
And we've
of course.
seen just on this list with John Ross, Kevin White, it's like they're not safe.
No, not. You are coin flipping hard coin flip.
Yeah. Number 3, I got another wide receiver. This one, much more recent example. Treylon Burks for the Tennessee Titans.
This one stings a lot. I'll go off a little bit because they trade A.J. Brown for this pick, for the number 18th overall pick, the Titans. Mike Vrabel loses his shit. He does not think this is a smart move. They do it anyway behind his back, and they draft this guy. So he's not only is he a first round wide receiver, now he has to step in for one of the better top 5 wide receivers in the league. A.J. Brown was still elite at that time. It was a big deal, him getting traded.
So for Treylon Burks, I mean, that's scary, right? You're having to fill A.J. Brown's shoes. But for fantasy football, we look at that and we saw, oh, that's so good. It's like a can't miss. He's going to step right into the A.J. Brown role. Yeah, the volume. But this is my favorite, one of my favorite stats. As a rookie, Treylon Burks, he caught 33 balls for 444 yards and 1 touchdown. As a rookie. Those are all career highs for Treylon Burks.
Oh, no.
33 for 444 and 1 touchdown.
As a fantasy manager, you got to just be like banging your head against the wall after a season like that.
Yeah, so again, another big body, like alpha X receiver who drafted in the first round, drafted to be great, and it's just a combination of injuries and not really adjusting to the level of NFL defenses.
Yeah. And offensive play calling, having to fill massive shoes, a lot of responsibility. Yeah. I mean, not many people can come in and do that as a person, let alone for fantasy.
Other wide receivers that I could have put here, Laquan Treadwell is like...
That's a good one.
It's kind of a cliche. That's the only reason why I didn't include Laquan Treadwell on this list. Is because I feel like he's always on everyone's lists of biggest busts. But, like, again, guys drafted to be great in the first round with all these expectations. I traded for Treylon Burks in Dynasty.
I did not know that.
Yeah. It was in our 32-team Dynasty League, and I wanted to draft him as a rookie, and he was taken 1 pick before me. And so I had to settle for Chris Olave.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Wow. Some of the mistakes that other people save us from without even knowing it, right? But then I kind of bought the dip with Treylon Burks after a disappointing rookie year. I was still so in on it, and I gave up, Tyler Boyd and some mid picks.
Nothing.
I bought the dip. Right.
Right.
And it just dipped farther.
Yeah, the hole got bigger.
Yeah. So, maybe you could argue that it was still worth the swing at the time.
Sure.
But I really liked Treylon Burks.
Yeah.
In college, his tape, we're not above it, and Josh Doxson, that's kind of a more obscure pick. He was a little older, but boy, I really liked him at, I believe, TCU.
Sure.
Yeah, it's tough. We've seen a lot of wide receivers on this list.
Yeah, what a huge! I think this is one of the better picks. I think when I saw this, I was like, yes, 100. This is an easy add to the list.
A recent example of a guy who just totally busted,
right?
With all the expectations. So he's the top wide receiver on this list for those reasons,
right?
Also on this list, another more recent example of a guy who just flamed out for fantasy despite all these expectations.
Ooh.
It's Trey Lance. I almost didn't include him for the same reason as Laquan Treadwell. It's like everyone talks about Trey Lance being this bust, but I'm like, I can't not include him.
Right.
Number 3 overall pick by the 49ers. And just like they got the better of the Bears when the Bears traded up.
Yeah.
What did the 49ers give up to move into the number 3 pick?
Their first round, the next year's first round, that same next year second and something else. I mean, they gave up. They gave the yard up. They filled the truck and they dumped it on the Bears' front lawn and said, "Give me that 3rd overall pick so we can go get Trey Lance."
It was crazy, and I remember at the time, a lot of people in fantasy football circles, they had Trey Lance as the number 1 rookie quarterback.
Right, I remember
because
that.
he runs.
Yes.
It was a massive deal for fantasy football.
The new Colin Kaepernick.
Sure. Yeah, it was like, well, this guy runs. That's the guy you want for fantasy football. He's going to have all of this. He's just going to get the ball every play.
Right.
And he's going to produce so much for fantasy football. He almost can't miss just because of the volume.
Exactly.
He struggled to even get on the field. It's freaking nuts. So it was injuries, and it was
Jimmy Garoppolo
not being the best quarterback on your team.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
He struggled with both of those things. Yeah.
He couldn't get past Jimmy Garoppolo.
Trey Lance has 5 career starts in the NFL.
Oh my God.
So
and there's what's crazy is if they were any other team, if they didn't hit gold with Brock Purdy, they would be in purgatory. They would be in franchise hell right now.
They might still have Jimmy Garoppolo. That'd be nice. That would Seahawks be nice.
Fans.
Yeah. But unfortunately, they got that.
They got
Mr. Irrelevant
so lucky with Brock Purdy.
Another guy that I could have included on this list, who I think it's a little too early, but he's well on his way, is Anthony Richardson.
I don't see how Anthony Richardson doesn't make this list in the next year or two.
Right. If we're going to redo this list, I think I'd probably putting Anthony Richardson on it. And the parallels between him and Trey Lance are crazy because Anthony Richardson is like, well, is he a good passer? I don't know. But he runs. And that's what you want for fantasy football.
Right.
But he's not a good enough player. And also he's dealt with injuries just like Trey Lance. So, crazy.
I wanted the Seahawks to draft Anthony Richardson. I was upset that the Colts got ahead of us and did that. And I thought we could have gone for a huge swing there to get him. And I am so glad we do not have Anthony Richardson right now.
Yeah.
Side note.
Well, that's a great segue into our number 1 player.
I don't like that.
Maybe some hometown bias here, but at number 1, I'm putting the Seattle Seahawks first-round pick Rashad Penny as the number 1 bust. And I'm just going to throw this stat at you. Rashad Penny was the number 27th overall pick by the Seahawks in 2018. At a time in a world where it was like, you're so dumb if you spend a first-round pick on a running back in the NFL draft. And the Seahawks did that. He didn't start a single game in the first 3 years of his career.
Because of Chris Carson.
He couldn't beat out undrafted Chris Carson.
Right. Which was great. I mean, I loved Chris Carson.
Chris Carson's cool.
Yeah.
He's cool, dude.
Yeah.
But, like, for fantasy football, he flamed out before he even got going. He never started a game in 3 years.
Yeah, that's a really good point. As a fantasy manager, you gotta just be like screaming at your phone or the TV or the Seahawks, all of it. Just like, why isn't this draft capital on the football field getting those carries?
Yeah. He didn't start a game until he was in his contract year.
Oh boy!
Like that's just insane, and there's no real like parallel for that. I don't have any other comps for another running back who was drafted in the first round of the NFL draft that never started. And we'll see. The next slide shows it kind of breaks down the actual hit rates, but man, in the NFL draft, if a running back is taken in the first round, that running back is like guaranteed volume. Like that's the safest choice you can make.
Right.
That's like you have your guys in the top 10 like the Zekes and the Saquons, but you also have guys later in the first round. I'm thinking of like a Josh Jacobs or a Travis Etienne. He had a down year last year, but it's like the volume is there.
Yep, for sure.
The volume was not there with Rashad Penny. He never started a game in 3 years.
Wow.
It's so just
poor
like,
management.
It's an outlier.
Wow.
So, and because it's such an outlier, that's why I felt like I had to put him on.
Is that like the biggest miss of Pete Carroll's and John Snyder's drafting?
Well, I would love to make a podcast about that. That could be its own episode of just draft misses by the Seahawks.
In the first round, particularly.
Oh. No.
Okay.
There's some bad picks by the Seahawks. I don't know. Yeah, you could at least blame injuries a little bit with Rashad Penny.
Sure.
But, like, every running back misses some games here and there. Like, at the end of the day, he just wasn't better than Chris Carson.
Right.
So it was just a wild pick by the Seahawks.
Sure.
Wild for fantasy that, like, this should be such a lock. And it wasn't.
I'd love to see the stats that you were talking about.
Sure. So, okay, we have hit rates. And so like I said, every skill position player, I said, okay, this guy's a hit, this guy's a bust.
Right. A hit for fantasy or a hit for the team that drafted him?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these, I determined whether or not they were hits for fantasy football.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to be informative to the audience of, like, this is the actual value of your first round pick in your fantasy league.
Sure,
Like
sure.
when you're talking about rookies. So wide receivers who were drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, they hit 51% of the time for fantasy.
Okay. Not too, coin flip. That's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a coin flip, but I feel like when you have a draft pick and you're so excited to, like, get, like, a nice, like, that year's top wide receiver or, like, one of that year's top wide
Top
receivers.
3 or something, yeah.
You feel like it's better than a coin flip. Do you not? When you're drafting a rookie wide receiver, you're like, well, I know not all rookies hit, but, like, this one was in the first round of the draft.
I could see that.
Anyways, first round quarterbacks who were taken in the first round of the NFL draft, they hit 45% of the time for fantasy football.
That's not great, in my opinion.
No, it's crazy. We went through a lot of examples here of just they can either flame out right away, or they can kind of lead a team on, like a Mitchell Trubisky.
2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and they can be bad for those 2 or 3 years. However, I did kind of make a caveat for quarterbacks taken with the number 1 overall pick.
Yes.
If they are taken number 1 overall, in the last 10 years, they're 5-2.
I love that stat because I've had some reservations for Caleb Williams after last year. I've had some reservations, like Baker,
Trevor Lawrence?
Kyler
Murray?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you. That is super helpful information for fantasy wise that you are more likely to hit.
Yeah.
Definitely. You are 3 out of 4 times more likely to hit on the number 1 drafted quarterback.
And even one of those 2 that didn't hit, I believe, is Jameis Winston, who's still kind of bouncing around.
Sure.
As, he's relevant here and there.
Yeah.
I think he is a bust because he's
definitely
not a starter.
Right.
Okay. That's not as controversial.
No. That one makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to running backs.
Sure.
All right. So, like I said in my analysis, I used the first and second round. But here I found just such a discrepancy. I had to kind of separate them again.
Yeah.
When we're being prescriptive. So, first round running backs, 13 have hit and 3 have not hit.
Yeah.
For a running back drafted in the first round of the NFL draft.
11.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. 11.
11 hit, 3 did not. So that's like 80% hit rate.
That's nice.
That
and
is nice.
That comes back to that whole conversation of there's a reason why that NFL team is drafting a running back in that number 1 spot in the first round. Is because they don't have anybody else. There is a door wide open for this running back, and the team is investing their first round pick to fill that void.
Yeah, no, that's good. The 3 that didn't hit, we talked about them all.
Right.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Sony Michel.
Yeah.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Rashad Penny.
Wow.
All the other first-round running backs hit for fantasy.
That makes sense.
Second-round running backs, which in the fantasy community, that's what we're hoping.
Right.
When we see like a running back prospect, we're like, oh man, I hope they get drafted in the second round. If they get second-round draft capital, then that's
still
a
high
good
value.
sign.
Yeah.
It was almost 50-50 for second-round running backs actually hitting.
Sure.
55%.
I mean, it's not great, but it's not terrible.
It's a little bit better than wide receivers and quarterbacks.
Yeah,
so,
which is crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy. It's like still pretty good. So yeah, if you have a rookie pick and you're looking at these guys after the NFL draft occurs, just know that it's pretty much a coin flip unless you're getting one of those elite first-round running backs.
Like this year's Genty.
Yeah. So Genty, he's safe.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone else in the draft
80%
is like a coin
chance
flip.
that he's going to be safe.
Right.
You can feel pretty good about that.
Right. So like your Tet McMillan, your I don't know, a guy like a Caleb Johnson, guys who are
Golden.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Of a guys who's just like right now, everyone's just talking about how great of a prospect these guys are.
Right.
But it's just like, man, it's 50-50 basically.
Yeah.
Whether or not they'll work out.
Because we talked about this earlier. Wide receivers, they rely on the quarterback. They rely on the offensive line to protect that quarterback. They rely on the offensive coordinator, the play caller, to make sure that that wide receiver is getting plays, that quarterback can deliver those plays to said wide receiver. Very dependent on a lot more factors. Those young first round wide receivers are, where those running backs, like we just mentioned, there's probably an open void, an open hole that they need to fill, and that's why the team is investing that pick in them in the first place.
You just snap the ball, hand it to the running back.
Exactly. And hope that he gets 3 to 4 yards.
Yeah. I love what you said about the wide receivers being dependent on everything around them to produce. It's so much easier for a running back to produce for fantasy.
Right.
It's just you just hand it off to them and they run.
Right.
So anyways, if there was a takeaway from it, it's that running backs are safer.
Right. In the first round. Yep.
Besides that, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck to y'all out there with your rookie picks.
Grab your lucky coin and flip it.
Yeah.
Thanks a ton for making it to the end of the episode. You're a real one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That's a free, easy way to support the show, and it really helps us out. And leave us your comments down below if you're on YouTube, or send in your questions at thefantasyflowpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time.